Episode 148. If you're afraid to ask, you're afraid to learn.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilsa.
And here we are, folks. 2 Wednesdays, episode 148 of the very best podcast in the world, your only source in the universe for personal supremacy through health, wealth, and happiness. So, this episode is really, I don't know where I'm going to categorize it, to be perfectly honest. I think, it's about learning, and therefore, learning is something that should make you fucking happy because it presents you with interesting insights which you may or may not have been able to connect before you actually learned or fully understood the skill that you were doing. So interesting things start to happen. You start to optimize and whatever not. Anyhow, before we get started with today's devious example, it's a lot about sharing. Sorry, kind of lost track there. My notes were kind of fucked up. Anyhow, I promise to bother you every single day. Share these episodes with friends. It's important, right? Monday, I think it was about not letting yourself slip too much. And everyone, should go back to episode 146, listen to it, and share it with your friends. A lot of them are stuck in home office situations, which are not very satisfactory, despite the fact that, everybody's happy as a clam, supposedly, on their webcam, shitty Zoom meetings or something. It's something entirely different and something we as mankind are not really made for. Social interaction is insanely important, and you can tell me all you want that these Zoom meetings are the future. No. They're not, right? There's a lot of devious things going on in people's heads if they're isolated, not insulated, insulated, whatever. So, every straw of help that they could be getting from you in form of podcast episodes, for instance, is valuable to them, right? And so particularly Monday's episode, please, it's episode 146, logically, you should share with your friends and family, and particularly those who are stuck in a home office environment or banned into home office. You can almost say the leper colonies back in the day. Anywho, let's get started. The example, the setting is a young Lars in his early 20s in something called vocational training. It's what the Brits call it. It's kind of like an equivalent to a college degree that you get, but you don't pay for it. You get paid because you're kind of like part of the company and you do shit. And, depending on the theory is that within the learning curve, you learn enough so that you can contribute to the company. Therefore, the company pays for schooling, pays for, certain other shit and gives you a small salary at the end of the day into your paycheck so that you can survive, perhaps. Some can, depending on the job that you learn. It's good. Nothing more, nothing less. Anyhow, I'm in this setting, and I've done this whole thing in this setting is in an office of a financial provider, right? And I was there my first day, my second day, my third day, my first week, my third week, my fifth week, my 10th week, and on the first or second or third day, one of the ladies tells me, look, this is your computer. I'm like, yeah, I identified it. There's a keyboard and a monitor. Must be a computer. Thank you very much. And then she goes ahead and shows me an antiquated version of Lotus Notes. For a lot of you, that's, really, really in the yesteryears. But they were still using it in, what was this? Late 90s, very late 90s. And in this Lotus Notes things was a thing, like a to-do list issue, right? To-do list outfit. And it had a lot of to-dos. Some of them were set aside for me to take care of, and others were for her, and every employee kind of had their own to-do list. Imagine your Outlook for today's kids, right? So, where did I want to go with this? Right. In this to-do list were to-dos that were, kind of like memos that said, okay, file has got to go to the boss. But the boss was abbreviated in a way that the office was abbreviated. And I mistook this task list or these tasks for, delivering the files to the office, which was already done because they were there, right? So just to make sure, I opened the drawer, checked if the file was there. Yeah, it was there, done, boom, gone. And then, weeks in, I was called to the big man, and he was fucking furious, to a degree where he was actually, was quite sure that he would start, breathing fire very soon. And thing was that my mistake or I don't know, was it ignorance? Was it, like a juvenile thing that, I was just so sure of myself that I didn't ask? Was it their idiocy not to use the abbreviation, but to use full text instead? Maybe. I don't know. Whatever it was, I didn't ask. They didn't bother to tell me. So at the end of the day, it must have been my fault because I didn't ask, and therefore it kind of ended up costing the company not a lot, but still a bit of money. And this big argument arose, blah. Anyhow, it led to me asking questions more often, because I was like, okay, if it's on, let's assume for the moment that it wasn't their fault. Yeah, I could have made the argument that, yeah, you could have written it out, you lazy bastards. But they weren't so proficient on the keyboard as I was. So I was like, okay, yeah, fuck, it's my fault. Done. And so that's the point. However, and it took a long time. I was burnt for years with task and to-do lists because of that very traumatic memories for years. However, something very interesting occurred or resulted out of that. It was that I started asking questions when I was having fucking doubts. And this kind of led to another interesting result. It was kind of like a chain reaction where I started to learn shit because I started to ask questions. So, I'm a pretty clever cookie, but there are other clever cookies out there in a large variety of ways in their field of expertise. And one of these, fields was, of course, in the very complex financial industry. It's like you can learn so much if you just ask questions. And we were in this training, out of the office training kind of thing. And we had one of our, I think he was a chief financial officer or something, and he was there to greet us all and blah. And so we went up to him, a colleague of mine and I, and we engaged him in this very interesting conversation, which then eventually, many, many moons later, led me to aspire really big goals, because we had this big shot there, and he was spending time with us. So kind of like a rewarding feeling, pat in the back, good job. And anyhow, this led to me asking him proverbial holes into the stomach. I think after 2 hours and 3 whiskeys, we ended up, ending the polite conversation. But it started to, not only inspire me, but gave me tremendous insight into a large variety of statistical fuckery you could do, with which this dude was fucking insane at. And anyhow, long story short, the major trouble that, my ignorance caused, my ignorance, I don't know. My juvenility, is that a word? I don't know. My young, untouched virgin mind, let's put it that way, ended up costing money just because I was, while, I was unsure. I was quite sure because, I can put one together and the abbreviation, must be the office because why should I deliver the files to the big boss? He can get them himself, right? And so, anyhow, ended up costing the organization money. It was just I don't know what it was at the end of the day. My ignorance, let's call it ignorance for a lack of better words, of not asking, hey, am I interpreting this correctly, was a loss of money. Get it. The learning curve of starting to ask questions, rather than, just to make sure, ask a question just to make sure, rather than assuming that, was where I really started to accelerate my learning. And I think, the same is true. And so this BS quote of, if you're afraid to ask, you're afraid to learn, is insanely true. And I can only warmly recommend it to everyone because, particularly in young years, you assume that you know the world. You don't. The world has got so much more to offer, which you start to learn later on. It's totally worth asking. So in that sense, I hope, perhaps someone, maybe a young Padawan that is a bit full of themselves, send them this episode, prevent them from getting chewed at from their boss like I did. And in that sense, I hope you've had a successful day. If you already have a good night. Take care, peace out, stay safe, and we'll be in touch tomorrow when we're going to talk about 78 years. Stay tuned.